Rome did not celebrate quietly anymore. Noise had become the language of the age, cheers in the streets, proclamations in the Forum, forced laughter in the Senate. And on this day the city roared again. A child had been born to the emperor. From the upper loggia of his house on the Palatine, Claudius could hear the shouts rolling across the Forum Romanum like waves breaking against stone. Hail Julia Drusilla, daughter of the emperor Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus. A miracle, they hailed her, born scarcely a month after Caligula's marriage to Caesonia Melonia, proof of divine favour, as though time itself had bent in obedience to the emperor's will. As always, Romans believed what they were told to believe. Some whispered, though never for long, that the child had simply been conceived before the marriage and born after it. Those who voiced such blasphemies rarely repeated them twice. Claudius lowered himself slowly onto the bench beside the balustrade, easing the familiar stiffness in his legs. Below, messengers hurried through the streets carrying announcements of celebration and instruction. Donation chests had already begun appearing across the city. For the child Julia Drusilla, the notices read, for her food, for her clothing, for her future. Claudius had seen them himself that very morning, polished wooden boxes set at temples, markets, and crossroads. And he had watched as citizens reluctantly dropped coins within under the watchful gaze of imperial guards. Not compulsory, yet unmistakably expected. Rome was learning a new language, the language of offering. Claudius turned as footsteps approached behind him. His wife, Messalina. She carried their own newborn daughter carefully in her arms, the infant wrapped in pale linen, small, warm, alive with the fragile insistence of new life. Claudia Octavia, he called her, a name that honoured Octavia Thurina, sister of the divine Augustus, from whom both he and Messalina traced descent. A name reminiscent of duty, of dignity, and safely distant from Germanicus, a name that now belonged to Caligula alone. Claudius studied the child in silence. So small, so unaware of the world into which she had just arrived, not into a world of celebration, but into one of survival. His elder daughter, Claudia Antonia, born to his second wife, Aelia, must survive as well. Since his marriage to Messalina, her mother Lepida had pressed relentlessly for Antonia to be wed to her son, Faustus Sulla. But Claudius had refused. Children were alliances, and alliances lost their value when every branch bound itself to the same house. And yet, no other matches had been offered. As Caligula's court fool, Claudius held little value in the marriage games of elite Romans. Still, he thought ironically, in Caligula's Rome it was safer to be overlooked than to be noticed. The Senate still gathered, but it no longer governed. Claudius knew this well. He had watched the transformation unfold, not in a single stroke, but in a slow erosion, like stone worn down by relentless water. It had begun with Augustus, who replaced most of the free-thinking senators with men eager to support his agenda. Then Tiberius, wily in his treatment of the senators, had inadvertently provoked them into anticipating his wishes. And now Caligula treated them as little more than lick-spittles. Nothing revealed this more clearly than the horse, Incitatus, Caligula's beloved creature, on whom he rode grandly across the bay of Baiae. Groomed in marble stables and fed oats mixed with gold flakes, Incitatus was ever draped in purple cloth finer than that worn by magistrates of Rome. The animal possessed servants, attendants, even a house of its own, luxuries granted not in jest, but by imperial decree. At first Rome had laughed. Then Caligula spoke. "Perhaps I will make him consul." The words had spread like a crack of thunder through the Senate chamber. Some smiled, believing it a joke. Others forced laughter, hoping it was. But Claudius had watched Caligula's face, and had seen no humour there. If a beast could sit among them, if a creature without speech, without reason, could be elevated above Rome's most ancient houses, then what truly were the senators worth? Nothing, and they knew it. On that day Claudius had watched them, proud men reduced to silence, their eyes lowered, their hands folded in obedient stillness. No protestations, no resistance. Under the reign of Caligula, Rome was also learning a second language, the language of humiliation. And yet, the emperor did not stop there. Across the city, more donation chests appeared, not for the state, but for the nourishment and upbringing of his infant daughter. Officially, they were offerings of loyalty, but in truth, they were measures of obedience. Men gave because they were watched. Women gave because their husbands were watched. And those who gave too little were remembered. The Senate, too, had learned to give. Wills were rewritten, estates reassigned, 2 parts to Caesar, 1 part to blood. Loyalty, measured not in words, but in inheritance. And Claudius said nothing. To speak was to exist, and to exist was to be seen. So Claudius merely observed. He watched the senators bow. He watched the people offer. He watched the emperor rise ever higher, above custom, above the Senate, above the law. And Claudius understood something few dared admit. This was not madness, as some were wont to claim. It was power, displayed so openly, so extravagantly, that resistance became unthinkable. And the Senate was already defeated, for he had taken their wives. At first they had been invited into the Palatium, housed in newly furnished chambers, adorned in luxury, and treated as ornaments of the imperial household. Officially, it was an honour. In truth, they were hostages, displayed like a harem of state, guarantees of obedience from husbands scattered across the provinces and legions. But whispers soon followed, and so did pamphlets. Small sheets, passed hand to hand, posted briefly in the night and torn down by morning. Some claimed they came from the emperor's own hand, others that they were the work of enemies, seeking only to blacken Caligula's name. Claudius had seen only one, a list, names of women, Emilia, Lucilla, Sabina, wives of Rome's most ancient houses, and beside each name, a number, a price. Claudius had not spoken of it, no one did. To acknowledge such a thing aloud was to risk becoming part of it. And whether true or false did not matter. Rome believed it to be true. Night had begun to settle over the Palatine, softening the noise of the city into a distant murmur. From his portico, Claudius watched the torches being lit one by one along the courtyards below, small flames pushing back the dark, but never fully conquering it. Rome did not sleep easily these days, at least not the Rome of marble halls and guarded doors, the Rome Claudius knew. Down in the streets, the people still feasted, still cheered the name of Gaius, and still believed themselves living in a golden age. But in the houses of the great, sleep came slowly. Doors were bolted, voices were lowered, and night stretched long for men who had too much to lose. Then footsteps approached behind Claudius, measured, deliberate, familiar. His name was Gratus, a tribune of the Praetorian Guard. He was not a powerful man, nor a loud one. But like Claudius, Gratus was a man who watched and remembered. Gratus stopped a short distance behind him and bowed, not deeply, not ceremonially, but with the quiet respect of a man who understood the value of silence. "You have news?" Claudius murmured at last. Gratus did not answer. His gaze moved instead across the torchlit courtyard to the shadows between the columns, to the patrols that crossed and recrossed the marble in practiced silence. "There's a number of them," he finally said, voice low. Now Claudius turned. "Who?" he asked. "Chaerea," Gratus replied. "Of course Chaerea," Claudius said with a nod. "Caligula humiliates him on a daily basis. He would be the first person I would anticipate to turn. But who is Chaerea talking to? Members of the Senate?" Gratus nodded. "I can't confirm what they talk about," he admitted. "But I have seen looks exchanged between himself and Marcus Vinicius, the husband of your exiled niece Livilla." "Yes," Claudius sighed. "Another that is no surprise given what happened to his wife. It's a wonder he didn't die of hydropsis along with Enobarbus." Gratus did not smile at the remark. "Vinicianus too," he added quickly, "his nephew. He lingers near the armory more than his station requires." Claudius absorbed that information without a visible reaction. "And what about Gaius Sabinus?" he asked. Gratus inclined his head once. There it was, thought Claudius. Not a crowd, not a mob, not even a conspiracy spoken aloud, but threads beginning to weave. Chaerea, insulted too many times. Vinicius, his wife in exile. Vinicianus, young, ambitious and reckless. And Gaius Sabinus, careful enough to be truly dangerous. Claudius turned back toward the courtyard below. A torch sputtered in the breeze before steadying itself. "They are not fools," he said softly. "Whatever they are planning, they will do it quickly. A plot too long concealed will always be betrayed." Gratus hesitated, just slightly. "And if they fail?" Claudius did not answer at once, but he could see it already, not the failed plot, but what would follow. There would be no trials held, no senatorial inquiries. There would only be erasure, entire houses emptied, names struck from the annals of history, and bloodlines ending in silence. Again the torch spat sparks into the darkness, catching Claudius's eyes. He watched it, his mind recalling the fall of Lucius Aelius Sejanus, and what Rome had done to his children. Claudius swallowed hard, but he said nothing.